come together on a Sunday. Sunday is a vacation day, not Shabbos. Somebody say left us. We come, we don't stop the learning. Thanks again to Rabbi Gaddisman for giving us this opportunity. For the whole Olam over here and the whole Olam listening online. I was asked today to speak about some more modern applications. We're learning the Sugi of Shir already for 3-4 weeks. And we spoke many different topics about it, but this is something which is very relevant to today, which is about warming drawer, a blech and a warming drawer. It's the obligation to have a blech and a warming drawer. Now, we'll go through what the whole blech is, and then we'll try to understand what the tzad, or not tzad, is to have a blech and a warming drawer. Now, we're going to explain that also. We'll get to that. Yeah, we're going to explain that. Yeah. We first have as follows. We spoke about why a person needs a blech, and that was Klan Chazal Shema Yechata. The person might go ahead and come Friday night and realize the food is not completely cooked. He's worried about it, and he's going to go ahead and play with the coals. We spoke about if it's a Melechas Bishul, a Melechas Havara, but the Chazal will worry that Shema Yechata, you're going to go ahead and play with the coals. The Chazal gave you two eitzes, Grufa or Ktuma, which means either taking the coals out completely or putting the apron on top of the coals that's lowering the fire. That was Bizman Chazal. Today we can't do that Metzias, as we spoke in length. So we said another eitzah of putting a blech. Last week we spoke about where the blech is supposed to be on. It's supposed to be on the fire, or on the knobs, or both. The ikid then is what we do is at least it should be on the fire, and it's kedai to be machma on the knobs also. That was basically the kitzah advarim. Even though you're not lowering the flame is still just as high. But since you're covering it, that's enough. It doesn't work by every other hacker, but it'll work over here. Now, we spoke about a blech on a crack pot. How you're supposed to have a blech on a crack pot. Again, this is all speaking about what we spoke about 2-3 weeks ago about Chananya. If we pass on Chananya, or that means Ma'acham and the Sai is enough, and you won't need a blech after Ma'acham and the Sai, or Bishul Kol Tzach, and you won't need a blech after Bishul Kol Tzach. That was that. Now, let's start with today's topic again, which is a warming drawer. The warming drawer is as follows. Today, they invented, it's not just today, it's already many years, but most of us don't have it because we didn't get new ovens. But when you get today a new oven, they'll ask you, do you want a warming drawer? What do you have on the bottom of the oven? You have a drawer that you keep anything that doesn't fit in any other drawer, right? It doesn't have a name to it because it's all random. Most of the time, it's already used pans or something like that. But you open a Pesach and you, this is really here. That's what I was looking for all year, right? Something like that. So they decided, you know what? Why should we have a waste of drawer? Let's put something underneath. Again, this is the norm today. That it keeps the heat. Many times, your wife, let's say she's cooking for a few people. One person comes home at 6 o'clock, one person at 7 o'clock, one at 8 o'clock. So how do you keep it warm? On the fire, it's going to burn. So they have this new, or what do you do? Your wife cooks it once, and you put it in the microwave again when the next person comes home. But there's a new mahalach, a warming drawer. It keeps it warm. It keeps it steady, whatever, we'll speak about the degrees, but it keeps it warm. So this is a very, very good Jewish feature. For Shabbos, you keep the food in there. The cholent's anyways cooked before Shabbos. You won't cook it in there, but the cholent's cooked before Shabbos. So have a pashta eitzah. You want it to go out throughout the whole Shabbos. You keep the food in there, and a blech will discuss. Akapanim, you have a hot food, geschmack, it doesn't get burnt. It's, let's say, 200 degrees. It won't get burnt, stays lukewarm, a little hotter than lukewarm, and your Shabbos is taken care of. Forget the whole blech story, all this. Good eitzah. No? A good to pretend? Sounds good, no? Sounds good. So, not only that, what's more relevant is that people will go ahead and do an asina lekatchila on day on Shabbos. What's an asina lekatchila? They'll take something out of the fridge Shabbos morning before they go to shul. They'll put it on there, and then they'll have a hot, relevant, basically a hot a hot piece of meat, a hot challah. Right? What do you do to keep your challah hot on Shabbos? Some of us put it on top of the crack pan, on top of the food. That's called the l'katchila. In the l'katchila, you put it on the first time on Shabbos. Okay, so now people are doing this with this warming jar. It doesn't get to 350 degrees. So I'm going ahead the same way. I'm putting it on top of a crack pot. I'm putting the challah on top of a crack pot and it gets toasted. Right? It gets hot. Well, no, you're putting up there to get hot and it does get hot. So too, they'll go ahead and put this in a warming jar.
We know how hot it gets.
Okay.
In relation with others.
Yes, that's what we're going to discuss. So that's going to be the discussion today. Now, this discussion came out, let's say 10, 15 years ago, where the poskim started writing on this topic. But really, it's not a new topic. It should be discussed already way before. And I'll give you a shaila that was asked to Moshe. In Chaim Chelik Daled, Simonai and Daled, in those long chuvas. Over there, Moshe was asked as a question. He said, could you go ahead and put challah or whatever it was, food, on a heater? Yeah, you're putting it on a heater. Why not? It keeps it warm. And not today. Today we only have vents. But Amol, they had radiator. Exactly. So you go ahead and you put on the radiator, and you'll have a pashta place where to keep your food warm. You don't have to keep anything on. You have a radiator going anyways, and shouldn't be a problem. This was the question asked to Moshe. Now we'll get to that soon later on. But upon him, so basically we could be medama maybe something that Moshe was asked to this warming jar. That means even though the warming jar itself is a new patent maybe, but it's not really so because we have this already on this question. More than that, there is already a Mishnah Berurah that discusses this somewhat. And Mishnah Berurah is Semination of Gimel. It's discussed by, we didn't see it yet, but it's in Sif Hay. The Ramah discusses. Yeah, the Ramah is like by Simmons, by Ois Tzadi Tes. You have it, page Chav Dalet in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, and the Mishnah Berurah, yeah, it's Tzadi Tes and it's Kuf, and it's a little bit earlier also. But anyways, Mishnah Berurah, you have to know if it's similar, but it's kedai to know that Mishnah Berurah, that it discusses maybe such a place in the oven was called a kachlin that they would put. It wasn't where the fire was exactly; it was someplace close to the fire. That's what someone would be medama, but we'll see. That's why it's not so important because it's not really similar because this thing has a heating element in itself. So let's discuss as follows. There are some warming drawers that have a dial to it, and you could raise it, let's say, from 150 till 350. Doesn't get like an oven 550. There's no broil on it, but you could go from 350 to from 150, let's say, around to 550 to 350. So again, from 150 to 350, there's a dial. Has three knobs, three. It's a 150, 250, and 350. 3 settings. Let's say that's one echetim. Today they're coming out with more and more of these products. There's another echetim of that there's no dial at all. So let me ask you a question. A hot plate that there's no dial. Right? The regular hot plate, the large hot plates, you're putting your food on there. There's no dial. Is there any need to have a blech? Is there any reason to have a blech on a hot plate without a dial? The whole problem is a shemi yichata. There's no shemi yichata. Is there any need to have it? what would you say? There's no Gzeir Shemiyachata. If there's no Gzeir Shemiyachata, then why would you say that you should need a blach? The whole problem is only Shemiyachata. Over here, there's no Shemiyachata because there's no dial, so you don't need a blach. The Torah says it's not like that. Some poskim did go with that, but we don't hold like that. Why not? What would you say? Light plug. Once this is a heating element, so we say light plug. And also, and therefore you need a blach. Now, this warming drawer that has no dials, weiter, I should say light plug, and you need a blach. Now, to put a blach in this warming drawer is not a simple idea, because you don't even know where the heat's coming from. Which means, if you're just going to put a blech on the bottom, the heat probably is coming from on top and an element behind or something. There's different types of warming drawers, but it's lav dafka coming from the bottom at all. Probably it's coming from on top. So you can't go ahead and put a blech there. It's not a game. And that's why we had difficulties explaining how do you have a blech in the oven. People are leaving the food in the oven every Shabbos, Friday night. They leave the oven on for 2-3 hours. That should be hot at least for Friday night, or some even leave it on a whole day. But like upon them 2-3 hours for sure. How are you putting a blech? So we said some eitzes. That you're putting some food which is stomach v'yafaloi, some food which is stomach v'raloi, putting them together. Maybe that's a mila because then you're not going to be mechata because of food in stomach v'raloi. Whatever the eitzes were. Or we said another eitzah because you're putting it on Shabbos mode. And the only way to get it off Shabbos mode is by shutting off the whole oven. Since the only way to stop it is only by shutting off the whole oven, that we don't see in Shemiyachata, that you might take everything out and put everything back in. Therefore, we said, today's ovens, we have a mokum to be making. Now, the problem was, that's good by the oven, but what's by the warming drawer? How are we going to go ahead and solve this problem? So now, let's see as follows. First, let's just try to make it a little calm before we throw everything on you. We spoke about that mikadin we pass on like Hanan. And since we pass on like Hanan and mikadin, so it has to be a third cooked. Most of the times, you're not putting something in a warming drawer that's not a third cook. It's a third cook. So since it's a third cook, so Mela, there wouldn't be a problem mikadin anyways. The only nicer why we're dealing with this is because the Be'alacha says that you should try to be machmer. Now, if you try to be machmer, you shouldn't have every single week lahed not to be machmer. You're putting it in. So good, you tell me once or twice a year, you go ahead and you put it in some place and it's already machmer on the site. No problem. 10 times. But it should be every single week that should be a mahalach of cooking. That there should be no blech at all, even though it's machmer on the site. That l'katchila shouldn't be done. So that's why we're really stuck with this warming drawer. So now as follows. Let's try to understand, is this a place to be mevashel? Is this a place that people cook? Now, why do we have to deal with places where people cook? Because what was the chashash? The chashash was, Shema Yemahe Bishulai. You might go ahead and be, we're not talking about, even though we're talking about the Issa Avara, what were we discussing? The Issa Avara was that you might go ahead and make this thing get cooked quicker. Are you going to make this thing get cooked quicker in this place? Why not? Because it's not the norm for it to get cooked there. We're going to get to that. We'll speak about that. So since this is not a place where most people normally cook, therefore, that's not considered, that doesn't go into the problem of chashash miyachata. The only reason why we have chashash miyachata is only because there's a place where you cook. Over here, there's not a place where you cook, so therefore there shouldn't be a chashash miyachata. You hear the shmuz? Again.
Same as an oven, right? Same as a regular.
No, Rabbi Gaddisman, no, a regular oven you normally cook.
Why?
That's where you cook, you bake things.
With the fire.
Doesn't make a difference. The fire is underneath, the fire is on top. But the Ikinakud is that this is a place, a mokum lavashal. So a mokum bishul, you have to go ahead and put a blach. But in a case where it's in a place where it's not a mokum bishul, over there won't be any chashash of shamichata.
Who says it has to be an official mokum official?
The question is?
Yeah. So Rabbi Black is asking, who gave us this right that we need a mokum abishal? This is a heating element. I'm worried the guy's going to want to heat it up quicker. I finished. So they wrote on the drawer that this is not a heating, this is just a heating element, and you don't cook in this place. Question: could you cook an egg there? How much degrees do you need to cook an egg? Do you know that?
Anybody? Cook it in the sun.
You cook it in the sun. How hot do you think it's getting in the sun? How hot is it here? Right? 100 degrees max. 110 degrees. Right? You cook it on the floor. We have all the cases in Chazal. Mishnah over there later on. Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes. Right? So we're dealing with these cases that you're cooking it on the floor. How hot do you think it got? We're talking about the Radin. Right? What happened over there? Right? Right? The sun didn't, right? You can get that hot. So 110 degrees, you can cook an egg. So in the warming drawer, I understand that you're not going to cook your heavy piece of meat, let's say your rough piece of meat. But an egg, so don't tell me it's not a cook. Yeah, we'll get there about the warming plate. Now, so if we're discussing a place that you're not going to cook, yes, you might cook, and you might not be this thing. You might not cook a chicken soup, but you'll cook an egg. You'll make an egg on there, right? So even what we're saying that it's not a Makom Bishul, which we're telling you, you're not going to cook your soup there, but an egg you might cook. So you're right that they wrote on it, not a Makom Bishul. But it doesn't make a difference to us because we know that since you could. Yeah, it was hot and round, yes. True, but not hotter than that. It was 110 degrees. He's asking that it was as hot in Rabin just as much as in New York. Yeah, it probably is, but it's not hotter than that, and it wasn't 200 degrees. That's for sure. Yeah. So Akaponim, the question is again, what are smichas to say that's not a makom to cook? So let's try to understand it, and let's see what the Ramosha is like this. Ramosha. It's in Chelik Dalid, Chaim Simon Ayin Dalid. Over there, he has a bunch of small tshuvas written to Rabbi Eida, and it's in Bishul Islam Dalid. Normally, Ramosha didn't write like that. Over here, Ramosha answered him. He asked many shilas. Ramosha answered him.
122. 122. Talk about the radiator.
Yeah. What I mentioned before. Islam Adal, a little higher. A little higher.
Raise it up a little bit. There you go.
There you go. Small short shaila. Radiator. The food that was already cooked. It's even hot. Even without a hefsik deir, that's not the derech bishul. Tshuva. Now again, this is not exactly talking about Shia, but it's the same. It's relevant to Shia also. Tshuva lahamin k'deir shu chamok tzas kashir, to put a hot pot. Shiro la'oichle machas chamimusay mutter al haradiator. This is not Moshe's normal derech, just to write. It wasn't like Chaim Kanievsky, the one where it answers, but over here that's what he did to us, and he just writes that it's mutter. He doesn't explain. Now, how would we explain it, and how does the Eicha Shabbos explain it?
It goes for the Shail. It says ain't there Bishul B'kach. Bishul.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But it definitely helps us out. He's telling you you're not even doing a similar katchila. What's the pshat? So this would help us out the way the Shabbos explains it, and however you push it, the way the other saying it over here is that some place which is not miyuchid for Bishul doesn't go into the Gzeir of Chazar. Doesn't go into the Gzeir of Chazar and Kolshkin, the Gzeir of Shia. It's not a place to cook on your radiator. You start putting a piece of meat in your radiator, your wife comes, throws it right out. What is this all about, right? So this is not a makom to cook on Shabbos. Never. There's not a makom to cook. So therefore, Moshe told him, again, the way the Olam said very good, the way Rabbi Gaddisman said, remember the Shail, explain the Shaila. Kivon she'ein derech bishul v'kach. This is not the derech bishul. On that, Moshe said, yes, it's mutter. And obviously the obvious reason is because what he just explained is ein derech bishul v'kach. So that's l'chayra the pashtus. Now, let's go to Moshe and Lamed Hey. Next one. Can I heat up a kedera that was cooked? It's still a little bit hot. A machshir, which is meant for chimum, for heating, and not for cooking. Like a hot plate, he says, if you look at it, those next words in the parentheses. Steam table. You know what that is? Steam table. Yeah, okay, another hot plate. Gamble has today the ain't that Bishul Bekaf. What's he asking? Ramesha, you just told me. I mean, he didn't get the tshuva yet, but he was relying on what Ramesha was going to tell him in Islam and Dalid that a radiator will be mutter because ain't that Bishul Bekaf. So how about a hot plate? Zok Ramesha, tshuva. Al plata chashmalis. If it's not possible to cook, a little lower, yeah, tshuva, yeah. Al plata chashmalis, is bashel sham. If you can't cook oz mutter lahamed kedera chama, then it is mutter to put a hot plate, a hot pot. Im ein sham elo mida achas lechaim. If there's only one knob, there's no knobs. There's 1 degrees, stays by 1 degrees, by the same degrees. Im yesh shtei midas aser. But if there are 2 knobs, if there's a knob that you can raise it, then it's awesome. Fine, that's another thing. Goes weiter after the period. V'al shulchan hamechumim ba'adim, a shulchan which has heating element to it. K'meduma she'efshel is bashel sham v'imkein hu memelo derech bishul. You could cook this. It's memelo derech bishul. Achem efshel is bashel sham k'meduma shu v'derech atmana v'azas atmana. Okay, the rest is not negated. So now, Ramesh is telling us over here that if it's a place that you could cook, it's a problem. It's only in Iev Shaliz, Bashal Sham, is where it's mutter. That's not shaykh to cook. But if it's shaykh to cook, Ramesh is saying it's a problem. It's stira. Ramesh, one tshuva to the next. Tzani wrote it later, changed his mind. One tshuva to the next. In Islam Adalid, it tells you very clear. The reason why it's mutter is kivan dein derech bishul bekach, which means even if you could cook on the radiator, no one in history has cooked on radiators. No such thing. Therefore, Zakta Maisha, it's mutter. The next tshuva comes along and says, no, it's only if it's Efshel is Bashel. But if it's Efshel is Bashel, then I tell you that it's Aser. How do you have a steer and Moshe, one tshuva after the next? Now, we can all blame the old blame that we took. This is a Chelik Ches. Igos Moshe Chelik Ches. We're not getting into politics, but there were some changes in some words, and actually there were in this tshuva. There is Eidish tshuva exactly, and there are words different here. There are different words. Have you there? Yes.
Yeah, the original provider.
Yes, we do have the original Rabbi printed in his different words. In these tshuvas itself.
Not Shiloh, the tshuva.
The tshuva and the shilas throughout. I'm saying throughout these tshuvas we have different words, but I'm not saying it makes a major enough communal halacha. It's very debatable, but let's not get into that. It was edited, exactly.
The radiator is fixed. It's like that's a fixed thing.
Explain what do you mean?
The radiator.
Why?
The radiator. You can't. There's no way to change things on a radiator. The warming will thing warm. There's a knob, but the radiator, it depends on the heating of the house. However you have.
So let me explain. It's a very wichtig nekuda. The Ramesh's, it wasn't. I can't say. It was. Ramesha was very clear in the second tshuva that the only reason why I'm asking it is because there's another midah, which means there's another dial that I could raise the heat setting. There's another setting. If it's a flat plata chashmalis, even Ramesha would agree that mekadin you don't need a blach. If it's something that has no other setting, Ramesha might agree that you don't need a. Now, where's the Ramesha coming from? There's a tshuva written someplace else in our Chaim Chela Gimel Siman Nun. Ramesha talks about having. I don't think you have that on the. You don't have that. Ramesha discusses having a hot blanket. You remember such a thing? Still been up to such a thing, right? A heated blanket. Right? So Ramesha discusses if you're allowed to have that on Shabbos. Why not? Why shouldn't you be allowed to have that on Shabbos? So Ramesha says, because you might go ahead and raise the dial. It's not hot enough. So you might go ahead and Shami Echata. And when you have Shami Echata, I mean, you might come into your house, you might raise the air conditioner, or you might lower the heat or raise the heat. Ever had such a problem? You cover all the knobs in your house? No, why not?
Every appliance should be very.
Everything. Why not?
We're not kosher for that.
Why? So we spoke about it, and we said, when it comes to food, hate meditation, right? Everything else, okay, since I'm a bit cold, we know what we're not talking about, we know it's Shabbos. Okay, it'll be a little bit cold. But when it comes to food, that's when we go crazy. So Chazal said, the whole list is very important to know this. The whole list of Shami Yechata is only when it comes to food. Kumtra Maishan says, no, this is again, Archaim Chele Gimel Simen Nun, in the Dibber Maschel Mitzad HaChashash, he says, Shema Yava, he's talking about the electronic blanket, the electric blanket that he had. Mitzad HaChashash, Shema Yava Lahagdel Achaim, Oy Lahagden, Vadai, Lahagden, Vadai Yesh Lahatzich Sheyase Heker. Hainu, Mokoim, Shemokoim, Makafta, Shaboim, Magdilim, Maktinim. The place where there's a button that you could raise it or lower it, Yikacheu b'matlis, v'yitva sheyiskam izeshu Shabbos. You know what's going on here? And Moshe tells you to put a knob, something, some hecker, on the knob to know that it's Shabbos. Unbelievable, right? So here you go. Moshe has a chiddush la'alacha that we never saw yet, and you learn the sugi, you're not going to see this. And Moshe's mechadish that when any time we're chayshish for more than just a regular lifetime, you don't have to just go ahead and just cover everything that you own. Any electric blinds going on in the house, any light, your Shabbos clock, I'm not going to go cover that. You know, there are people that cover it, but that's a chumrah mamash about it. Let's not make it. So Moshe is telling you that over here, by this shmicha, by this blanket, you should go ahead and cover that knob. So any place where you have a chashash that you might go ahead and play with it, you should cover it. Therefore,
Maybe sleeping is different because people, like in the middle of the night, they're not thinking and they just do things.
okay, Rabbi Black is trying to say that who adin, we said about when sleeping, I think someone on the online is also asking the shaila. When sleeping, you could, by mistake. Now, I just want to tell you that, just to say that is not pasha b'chlal, because we're not worried about a case of a misasek. We don't tell you don't have your fan next to your bed because your foot might hit it, and because misasek on something which is not the norm. Does this happen every day? It doesn't happen every day. So it's just a misasek. Chazal didn't tell you chashashes for misasek, and therefore you don't have to cover your knobs because sometimes later happened by you once in Shabbos, once in your lifetime, then in Shabbos by mistake you pushed it over. It doesn't say because of that we should cover our knobs. Some people do that because they don't want they want to make sure it stays on, but not because you have to cover. There's no chiyuv to cover your knobs. Why not? Because it's a misasek. If it happens, it's just a misasek. So to say that Moshe just meant by sleeping, it's not to go ahead. That's not the pshat in the Moshe. Obviously, Moshe felt that this Shemi Yechata, we're going to take even though it's not in the Chazal, we don't see this, but we're going to take anything that you're really used to doing, switching and changing. We tell you, go ahead and cover it on Shabbos. That would be the Psar and Ramosha. So if Ramosha held like that, so that's the pshat why Ramosha is saying it over here also. He wasn't Meirich in this tshuva. But really what Ramosha meant was that when I have a knob, that you might go ahead and play with it. It might not be a misasek. It might be for real. You might go ahead and since you're used to doing that, therefore Chazal told you that we should go ahead and make sure that this is not done on Shabbos and cover it like this. It should be taking care of all the problems. That is the chayra, what Moshe is coming to say over here. So therefore, if this is true, Moshe would be paskening that in a place where, again, it's very unclear. This is the way we're touching up a Moshe. Lav Davka, there's a big fight between the Heintige place and what Moshe really meant over here. There's no way there's only one person that can answer the Shaila. Who? Moshe Feinstein, right? He's the only one that can answer. So he's not around, as far as I know. So we have to try to understand how to answer the steer in the two tshuvas. So again, let's go over it, and then we're going to try to have a havana to it. And Moshe wrote in the first tshuva about a radiator, since Ein derech bishul sham. That's what Rav Moshe wrote. It's not stable, is it? Okay, fine. Rav Moshe wrote that it's not derech bishul. The next tshuva Rav Moshe wrote, no, that's not enough of a heter. It has to be a place where it's efshel is bashul sham. Now that makes a big nafkamina to our warming drawers, because our warming drawers is a place that is efshel is bashul. The heaters, how hot did it get already? 90 degrees, 100 degrees. How hot do the radiators get? You still have a radiator in black? How hot does it get? If you touch it, you don't burn yourself. Not the best thing. You burn yourself? You take it off quickly, but it's like you don't burn yourself. Right? I don't think so, as far as I remember when I was a child. Right? So, therefore, that's a place where it's takanat shayach bishul. So even though Moshe in that tshuva wrote kivan she'ein derech bishul b'kach, but maybe he meant more than that. Maybe he meant efshel is bashul, like he's writing in the next tshuva in Lamed Hey. So therefore, it gets complicated to know exactly what Moshe meant for us to be makel on a warming drawer. Why? Because again, a warming drawer is ein derech bishul b'kach. Since it's ein derech bishul b'kach, but it's efshel is bashul, like we said, it gets to 200 degrees, and it's efshel is bashul. Now let's go fast forward a little bit with a CV. So what's it called?
Which one?
Sous vide.
Cooking.
Sous vide cooking. So
What's that?
yeah, so that's a new mahalach of cooking today. Is no, keep your old mahalach. Don't worry, but there is a mahalach that you go ahead and you put a piece of meat in a bag. The way that it's sealed, and water, you cook up water, and you put it in this element that stays, let's say, 180 degrees for 10 hours, and your meat is completely cooked. Even though, let's say, you would think that you need 350 for your meat to cook. But if it's in there for that amount of time, it gets cooked.
Are you cooking the water?
The water is hot, and the water is cooking the meat. But it's very low temperature. I think it's 160 degrees. That stays throughout. So I'm not going into that, Kaylee, because you're not changing. Whatever you did till now, the last 90 years was fine. Right? And we'll stay with that. But I'm just telling you, there's a musig that the radiator can get as hot as 220 degrees.
Hey, let's go.
Yeah. So anyways, okay, that's a good nice. But Akapanim, that's a place, the way we're saying it, Moshe, Pashas, you could say that's not a Mokum Bishul B'chlal. But a warming drawer that is efshel is bashal, it definitely gets a somewhat of a high temperature, therefore it should be asur. That's what we're saying, and you should need a blech. And we're saying to make a blech is very, very not simple, therefore we need an eitzah for these people that bought these warming drawers, and the whole kavanah was for Shabbos. So what should we do? So let's go over a little bit what we discussed the week before about chunk. If your plan depends on the landlord, okay? If your plan was to keep just the chunk in there, that's not bad. Then we have already more mekaymis to be makel, which if you eat the chunk Friday night, Shabbos day, sorry, and you don't eat it Friday night. So we spoke about the be'alacha, the b'diavad. If it's a food that's only going to be eaten for Shabbos day, by then it'll definitely be ready, and therefore it would be mutter. Fine. So that would be a one echatimtza. Now, but that's not good enough because the people are keeping in there the food for Friday night. That's what they're keeping it. So the heter that we have to come along and say is, this is a good shayla? Does a woman have a problem with hatmana? So we didn't even start the sugi of hatmana. Chazal we could maybe handle a little bit. Hatmana, just to say briefly, hatmana is just something that has to be covered completely. So the woman drawer is not covered. There's aver in between. There's space in between your food or the pat and the drawer itself. Therefore, that's not a problem with hatmana. But Mitchell will discuss hatmana when we get to it. So getting back to here. So we're discussing now, again, we're looking for the heter of this woman drawer. So, what you would have to say is like this. This woman drawer, why am I putting it in the woman drawer? Even if it has a dial, why am I putting it in there? You never cooked in there. No one cooks in a woman drawer. You're right, you could cook an egg, but it never happened, even Ben Ismanim, when your children are home and they're fighting over who gets their pot for cooking the egg, right? You have 2, 3 children, all of a sudden they became cooks for breakfast, right? Everyone's cooking their type of egg, and everyone needs their own pot. No one yet has found this invention that they cook the eggs in the warming room. What's the pshat? Because that's lahedya, not a place of bishul. They lahedya made a new patent. They want to create a place that's not bishul, just for eating. Why it has a dial? Because you want to go ahead before you put it in. You want to know what you're eating. Either you're eating a piece of meat, you'll put it on, you'll raise it a little bit. You're eating soup, you won't be ready. Whatever it is, whatever the chtimtz is. So it's lahedya chimum and not bishul, heating and not cooking. That is what the purpose of this drawer is. It's not called the oven.
Maybe even more keeping it hot.
Right. Okay. Rabbi Gaddis is being myself even more. It's just to keep the heat from what it was. No one cannot, you don't see people go ahead and, no, I don't want to say that. Okay. Back upon him. So therefore, since no one cooks in there, so that's the biggest hecker that you could possibly have. What did Chazal want? Chazal wanted that you shouldn't do an oifen of cooking. So what they say, go ahead, take out the coals. You know what? Or go ahead, cover the coals. Be memayit the oifen of cooking. Wasn't that the greatest meat of cooking by taking it out of the oven Friday afternoon? The thing got cooked in the oven, got cooked on your flame. You went ahead, you took it out. I don't want this heat anymore. I want to put it in a lower heat. If I did that lahedya, so isn't that the gresta hecker shaykh? That have nothing to do with this pot anymore? Now you're right. We can't go and make up new takanos. Okay, make it okay, like we said, you could put up a sign 6 feet by 10 feet. It says don't touch the pots. Doesn't work. We can't make up a hecker. But when we're dealing with fire, we do make up a hecker. We told you a blech. We were very bothered last week. What do you mean a blech? A blech wasn't memayit the fire at all. It may be distant the pot, but it wasn't memayit it. Still, we said, but when you're dealing with the fire, this is like a timtza. How to go ahead and be memayit somewhat of the chayim, and this is, I'm moving my pot, I'm doing a hecker on the pot and putting it in the place where to be memayit the chayim, that's enough. And that's what we started discussing. If I'm going to touch the fire, if I'm going to raise it or lower the flame after I put the blech on, maybe it's not a good blech, fine. That was last week's shmooze. But now we're telling you that I'm ahead, you're going ahead. And I bought this warming drawer just for warming. I never ever cooked in it, and no one cooks in it. It's lahedya made for warming, so I don't need a problem to say, I don't need a chashash to say, oh, maybe you're going to raise the heat. I don't want to deal with this pot. That's why I put it in the warming drawer. That's lahedya why I put it there. So since I did that lahedya, that itself would be a hecker of going ahead and not needing a blach. Let's bring some far out Dimyan. The Gemara says, the Gemara discussed a few times smicha, putting something next to the oven. Yeah, it's very hot there. Things could get cooked. Right? You're putting it next to the oven. The walls of the oven are extremely hot. Today we're insulated. The walls of the oven are insulated, but amal, the walls are very hot. And you soymech your pot onto it. Extremely hot. Is there any issa? No, right? Why is there no issa? Because not the place to cook. You're going to tell me it gets very hot? Something which is lahedya, that I took it out of the oven and I put it lahedya in a place where not to get cooked, that's mutter. Therefore, we want to say that a warming drawer could be mutter for shia and you won't even need a blech, a chiddush. Again, there are poskim that argued, this is already written maybe 15 years ago. It was Meisav on his Eidim wrote a tshuva on this, said it's asa, and he signed with the whole smichas that it's asa, especially Chazar and the Sin L'Katchila, which we'll get to more. But over here we have one of the greatest poskim of our times. He's not living anymore. I don't know if he's that famous or not, but he wrote a sefer called, he was from England. I know Rabbi Gaddisman holds of him, Ilamas. Machzel Yo, Rabbi Falk. And people think of him as a major chomer, machmer, this and that. He knew sugis, unbelievable. The heck was unbelievable. And over here he wrote very clear in the Kavitz, he wrote that it's mutter. So with all due respect, he was a murdig paisik, and he held that it was mutter. So there is a very stark mokum to be makel on this and not to need a blach. Again, the Sin L'Katchila might be, when I hold it there, that's Chazar, That might be a much Muhammadic topic.
Because a single chatchila means you're using it to cook, even though it's a very low flame, but you're using it to cook.
Yeah.
Does it get hotter than a hot plate?
See, a hot plate is what when they asked it. That's what we have to. A hot plate is different because we cook in a hot plate, which means what's a hot plate that we cook in? A crack pot. A crack pot is a hot plate. That's all it is. It's just called a different name, but it's regular hot plate. So a hot plate, even though you're saying most people don't cook there, but it's not true because it's just more condensed and people are cooking on it. So a crack pot is used to cook. So therefore a hot plate is not like a warming drawer. A warming drawer is lahedya. No one cooks there. Yeah, the kitchen. Yeah, so therefore no one cooks there. That's why it's mutter on Shabbos. Again, this is Rabbi Faltzva and other people were saimach on it. So therefore there is a makom laden to be saimach. Now, I'm not coming and talking about if you're going to go put something on Shabbos because that could be another shmuz because you might be cooking mamish. That means if a guy's going to go ahead and say, you know what, let me put some water, some cold water on it, and it's going to cook, but there's no problem with shami chata. Well, the guy's doing bishul deraisa. I mean, we don't really care if he's cooking. We don't care about the rabbanon the gzeir shami chata. This guy went and cooked. So a double lach, you're in problems. I mean, people are going ahead, and that's why I'm being very careful. We're talking about here the Isser Shia, who was on already Friday. We want to know if you need a blech. We're telling you have Michael ben Desai. We make out that we pass like Hananya. And you want to be machmeh that much, you don't have to be machmeh. You have enough to be Simcha to be makel. But the Bduna Sinna Lekatchila, that's another whole shmuz. And another shmuz, which we're not getting to today, is opening it on Shabbos. Do you open refrigerators on Shabbos? I think most of the belt is not to open refrigerators on Shabbos. Why? When you're opening it up, the motor's going on. Why do you open refrigerators on Shabbos? You know there were many machmirim. Why do we open it for? Because, what?
That's a big machlekes.
Right? That's a big machlekes. So that's refrigerators. What's the tzat to be makel? Refrigerator, let's say, is 45 degrees, whatever, some random number I'm giving you. In your house is 70 degrees. It's not a secretion. You open the door, that 30-degree difference is not really, it's not automatic. Maybe today's different. But like in Moshe's days, and when the person was discussing this refrigerator, it wasn't that much of a difference. So therefore, there's no secretion, and maybe it's like nichale. That's another shmuz. What's like nichale? What's not nichale? Like upon him, like ichbisle. So therefore, that's why people are making an oven. If your oven is left on 250 degrees on Shabbos, your house is 75 degrees, 70 degrees. That's a big difference. That's going to be an automatic. That might not be a grumble. That might be direct. And it might be a secretion. So to open your oven on Shabbos, a working oven is not so posh. That's why places that are makel on refrigerators are not so easy to be makel on oven. What does some places say? Some places say do it as shinui. If your oven's left on Shabbos, put, let's say, a towel on the handle and pull the towel. I'm not saying that's mut. I'm not getting involved in that shmuz, b'chlal. I'm just telling you, whatever that shmuz is going to be, that's going to be by a warming drawer. It might be a little less, but it's definitely 200 degrees. And the difference between 200 degrees and 70 degrees in the house, you might be plugging it on right away. Yontif is much more kal because grandma is mutter. But on Shabbos, it's awesome. So if so, that's another shaila, not for now, to be discussed.
How to open an oven on Shabbos?
How to open an oven on Shabbos, which is a very big discussion, because I think no one opened ovens on Shabbos, no one left ovens on. Today, people are leaving on ovens, Ma'asim b'chol yom, every Shabbos, and people 3 day yontif for sure. So yontif says it's a little bit like, but Shabbos, no, but you're right. The guy's right. They're leaving it on Shabbos, and now they're going to use it for 3 day yontif. So they're leaving it on the oven. Why should they leave it on the flame on top of the fire? Let them just leave it on the oven. Makes things simple. And therefore, we might run into problems of going ahead. And now it's a very important topic, the 3 day yontif, to discuss, especially Shavuos. Guys, when this important topic to be discussed is people eat Friday night, Shavuos night, they're going to be eating milchas. You're not leaving 2 ovens on. It's going to be hot. You're not leaving 2 ovens. You're leaving only 1 oven. How could you have a fleshig oven with a milk oven? The shilas are coming up every day now. Everyone's asking these shilas because they want to keep on 1 oven or 1 flame. can have milchiks and fleishiks.
They have only one oven.
They only have one, right? Yeah, there are still people that only have one oven, exactly. So yeah. Okay. The kids said. So if so, how do you do that on Shavuos? Okay, we're not getting into that. That's a little, I understand it's a week before Shavuos, but that's not the topic that we were supposed to be discussing. So you have to know two things. If you go open your oven on Shabbos, Yontif will give you a heter, but on Shabbos, and for the Nagaya, these 3 days is how do you keep your kitchen kosher when you're eating milchig Yasuda on Motzei Shabbos. Many people do eat milchig Yasuda, some people eat today, whatever. That's another whole share with the minigas. Okay, now let's.
Opening the warming door is more common than opening the oven.
Not really, we say,
Why?
because it's pulling it open, but it's also 200 degrees, and it has direct thermometers.
You're not cooking.
That doesn't make a difference. This is not mitzvah cooking. This is mitzvah electric. You're putting on electricity. You're turning on it's like it's a direct turning on.
Everybody's clear here, we're talking about a different chelik of the Hilchos Shabbos, talking about opening things that causes actions that we'll discuss tomorrow, but this is a different side. Okay.
Just to know that Ramosha, and Rabbi Eida's Ramosha, Chelik Dalet, Simonai and Dalet, Bishul, Ois Chav Ches, he discusses about, he has a discussion about this, a small discussion. It's kedai to see if he has it on him.
Page 121. Let's go back to the Marmukah.
Once, I don't know if someone's going to discuss it, it's kedai just to know a little bit about it. Up, raise it. Page Ois Chav Ches.
Ois Chav Ches on the left side. Tanurim.
A little high, a little lower. No.
Chav Ches, page 121.
Hey, you got it. You got it a little bit higher. You got it a little higher. Yeah. Tanurim sheyesh b'hem chav ches. Tanurim sheyesh b'hem thermostat. Ha'im muter liftayach dalet satana b'Shabbos k'sheyesh eina delakas. The nearest she'ena p'sik reisha kiven she'efshel liftayach dalet satana ve'eish lo tiglak v'mkein have dava she'ena mischaven. Kefi ha'nir zakta Moshe ein b'zeh p'sik reisha v'hu dava she'en mischaven ve'ein lesser. So Moshe over here gives us a heter, and he says, Ein lesser. Why? Because it's not a p'sik. Now again, when the oven is on, no problem at all. So if you could see, which most of us could see, you could see through the door, it's a glass door, and you see that the fire is on, there's no problem with challah. But if you can't see, or it's taka not on, then the Moshe discussed this, and Moshe says, Ein lesser, davar she'en mischaven, ein b'zeh p'sik. So what did I think a place can do? They say this was the Moshe days that the ovens weren't so, and they're probably right, not they're probably right, they are right. It didn't go on the moment you opened the door. It took 10 minutes till the thermostat realized that, it changed. The degrees are different in the oven. But today's ovens, to the second, if it goes down a degree, a moment, it's over. Therefore, that could be a problem of even a Moshe maybe wouldn't be making, because a Moshe was only making because it's not a p'sik. But today it might be a p'sik. That's where the HaRav, Chelik Dalet Simon Lamed Beis, and Kavitz Beis Alevi, who's we know that's there's Vazna, he was machman that. But the Baal Machzor Liyo, he says in the Sefer Zachav Hashama, he put out English books of a shiurim that he gave to seminary girls, fascinating shiurim, and he put out over there, and he writes over there, Ein lachshos le'isazeh. Again, today we could say that it's different because our ovens might be more sensitive and more to the direct, and therefore be considered p'sik. Again, that's just briefly discussed it. Now let's discuss one more topic that also an interesting topic. Legabe Shia is a semava. Where is your blech in that semava? No one has it.
Someone have a Shabbos switch.
And what does that Shabbos switch do?
You can can't do things. You can't
Yeah.
do-
Yeah, Rabbi Kalbach is saying that some do have a Shabbos switch. It's true. Some do have a Shabbos switch, but some don't. We're discussing obviously the ones that don't.
We're getting ahead of us.
Right. So the question is that if it doesn't have a chayah, why am I not makbid on Gufik Tuma? I don't have anything to cover it.
Where's the blood?
Now, the pashtus you would say, before you came today, you would say there's no knobs. So what am I going to be? Yeah, but that was a place to cook. So, what's the guy going to do?
But everyone has an off and on switch, even if there's no knob in fire, right? Don't they have an off and on switch? The old style one has nothing. You plug it in the fire. Finish.
Right. Even today, we don't have off and on. We do. I don't have off and on.
The knob just to switch it from Shabbos to
Yeah.
handling what the Metzias of Urzar.
Right.
They changed over the last 30 years.
Dr. Moshe. Let's go to that Moshe again. Chelik Daled.
Which ice?
Ois Chav Gimel.
Page 121, upper right.
He's here.
We have about 10 tokens.
We do have that.
Yitzchak, page 121. Interruption. Begin if you don't.
Rabbi Yitzchak, Chaim Chelik Daled, Siman Ayin Daled, Bishul, Ois Chav Gimel. So Moshe discusses like this. Moshe discusses the Shaila. And he says, the Shoyal asked him, which is Rabbi Badna, he asked him, Doid Chimu Mayim Chashmali, She Efshel Hagbe Chaimai. You can't raise the heat. He mutter losses by Mayim Koyim, Ulechadrei Samach L'Shabbos. Could you put in cold water before Shabbos? Kivon Shein Loch Hashem Yechata, because it's not Choshesh. There's nothing to be mechata with. You can't raise the knob. Listen to what Moshe's choshesh. What are you going to do? Moshe, the shoyel, I don't know where Rabbi Badna thought about this chashash, Rabbi Ida, sorry, and he decided that maybe there's a chashash that you might take out water like this, the water is going to get cooked quicker. You hear this? Mind-boggling.
Bishul Deraisa.
Yeah, but right, and that's going to be the Shemi Yechata. He's going to go ahead, not play with the coals because he has no coals to play with. So what's he going to do? Take out water, and now it's going to cook quicker. Yeah, true. You hear the Shaila? Oh, he put it up now. Ois Chav Gimel.
All right. Up. 23.
Someone has to remind.
But that's what happens, you take out water that we eat. Oh, that's what happens.
Okay, let's go back to it.
Yeah. So when you're going to take it out, it's going to go quicker. Zakta Moshe Tshuva Mistabish Yesh Lasa. You hear what's going on here?
But is that a fact?
Mistabish Yesh Lasa. If you what?
It happens that you take water out.
Sure. If you take the water out, it's going to cook quicker. So you want your coffee right after Shabbos. Right, Shabbos starts. You want your coffee. And my wife just put in the water. What am I going to do? What do? You go ahead. You take out half the water, and the rest of the water is going to get cooked very quickly. That's the Matthias.
Is this the shop? If my shop takes a water for coffee, it's going to be cooked. That's it.
No. Again, let me explain it, Rabbi Kalman. This person went ahead and cooked, has cold water in the urn. Right before Shabbos, you fill up the urn, cold water. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to go ahead, and I can't be mechatet, I can't play with the knobs, there's no knobs. So I'll take out half the water, it'll cook much quicker, I'll have my coffee right away.
The water's still cold.
The water, right, exactly. Yeah, that's the Shiloh. Right. Dr. Moshe, there's a problem. And Moshe says that you have to make sure that you completely cook this thing is completely cooked before Shabbos. So an hour before Shabbos, look at your urn. Make sure it's full. If not, you're going to be over on the Issa, Chitui, you don't have a blech. Oh. Where is this? What's this coming from? And Nuk Zer Shemi Chata. So we have today we're going to stop with this. We have two. Moshe was mechadish, two new gzeiros. Oh, one gzeir Shem Yechata is by a blanket. That if you have a heated element by a blanket, you might go ahead and touch the knob. Shem Yechata. That wasn't Shem Yechata. We got rid of that. We said that was a nuchashash. Moshe was mechadish. And Moshe was the God Lada, the Pesach Lada, the Sa'atayah. So we have to take his word 100%. Now, next was this Rav Moshe. Moshe is telling us that there's no chashash. When you don't have a chashash of Shem Yechata, I have a no chashash for you. You might go ahead and take out half your water like this. You go, and through that, it's going to cook quicker. A naya chashash ba'alma. Bikan dazai. See what's going on here?
You don't need the Raisa because where's it wrong?
And now we're talking about Shem. Forget Bishul, even just Shem Yechata.
But just in general, which has this idea. We don't need the Raisa, that would be the wrong.
That a gram is also b'Shabbos. It's probably more like a gram. Probably more like a gram. But it's also b'Shabbos. So the Rav Ephraim, who was Rav Ephraim Greenblatt, who was a Talmud of Rav Moshe, he has many tshuvas to Rav Moshe. He lived in Memphis. Anyways, so he has a tshuva over there. Halachic case, Simon Reish Pei Zayin Oisei. Rav Nata was his uncle. Right? They were the same age, but he was his uncle. Right? And he writes a tshuva and he says that he heard from Moshe. They said b'feish, there's a chashash of a few seconds that you might go ahead and be you that coffee by you is this is going to make it or break it, and you might go ahead. He heard this from Moshe, and then Moshe said like it was not just some made up tshuva. And Moshe told him very clearly that there is such a chashash of Shem Yechata. So, and you're going to be goyim Bishul on Shabbos. So this was the true what Rav Moshe felt. Now the question is that we don't see in the Mishnah any such whatever we learned till now. We never saw such a chashash. Where did Rav Moshe come and make up a new chashash of Shem Yechata of taking out water of an urn on Shabbos? Where did Rav Moshe come from? The Mishnah says that we're worried you're going to touch the coals, you're going to do something. Where in the world did Rav Moshe come from? So someone asked this to Reb David Feinstein. Zeichet Tzadik v'Kadosh L'Bracha. You heard of him, right? Rav Moshe saw him. And he said, David said, I want to ask you another question. He says, the Chayra, this is so different than Moshe. And Moshe, the famous Moshe in Arachaim Chelik Aleph, Simon Tzadik Gimel, over there he talks about Shem Yechata. And he says, Ein chashash chiti ela be'etzem ha'esh. So he said, over here it should be mutter. Only ha'esh, over here I'm not touching the fire. How does it stem with that Moshe? This is what someone asked this, a friend of mine, by the name of Baron Zisau, he asked this to Reb David. And Reb David told him, I have another question. You asked me one question, this is Moshe. Where did Moshe come with such a chashash? I'll throw you another question. I have a Moshe saying not like a Moshe. This was his question. So what did Reb David answer? I do not trust this. I don't know if this should be taken, but I don't trust these tshuvas in Chaim Chelik Daled. I go with the tshuva that he wrote in Chelik Aleph. Chaim Chelik Daled is Chelik Ches. I would, if I have a steer in the tshuvas, I would go with the tshuva in Chaim Chelik Aleph. Okay, this is Reb David quoted in a sefer called Minchas Aaron. So it's printed already, so I can say it. But the Meister Reb David said, if you have a steer from Chelik Aleph to Chelik Ches, that's what now. I just have a yedua that Moshe was more machmer when he knew that what he was going to speak about was going to be translated into English. Because he was worried that people that know how to read everything, they're just going to be Madame and Milsa, and they're just going to be making on everything. So therefore he was more machmer. He knew Rabbi Ida was writing an English book. So therefore, it could be with more machmer. I'm just trying to say, because to say that Moshe, it wasn't made up, this chashash. I told you Rabbi Ephraim Greenblatt wrote that he heard it from Moshe himself. So to say that it was just, to say so sharp that Moshe didn't, Akaponim, there definitely has a chashash of taking out water. So, us living after Moshe, and now we're here. I would tell you to be chayshish for Moshe's chashash and make sure the water is cooked before Shabbos. It's not such a big deal. That's what Moshe writes.
Sometimes it's a big deal.
Sometimes it is a big deal. It's true. Caterers, and even in your house, sometimes your wife needs hot water right before Shabbos. something, whatever, this, a cleaning lady takes out. And yeah, you forgot. So that should be another check on your list, on your checklist, that make sure the water's up there already an hour before Shabbos.
But if not,
Yesham in this Moshe was Mechadish, Murdi Chiddish, Psianka Fisher writes that he never heard of such a chashash. They asked him Shlomo Zalman. There's a sefer, beautiful sefer called Ma'or Shabbos, 4 or 5 volumes. Someone Yadla in Eretz Yisrael. Beautiful sefer. He's El Yid. There's a lot of new chuvas, Shlomo Zalman, Yashav, in the back of this. In Chelik Aleph, Amid, Tov Kuf Tezayin. He asked for Moshe the Shaila. He asked Shlomo Zalman, do we go with this or Moshe? And Shlomo Zalman did say, Mayim Shlomo Bashut Tzalchan, Shabbos Nochenu, and Moshe was right. So it's a little bit problematic. So again, it's Kedai to have this on your checklist, that at least like an hour before Shabbos, make sure your urn is complete. If it doesn't happen, there's enough basamchus to be makel, and therefore that's why we don't know. We never heard about this, but really there will be enough to go ahead and be makel.
how long does it take to be Atzaleta? You're in the dam?
I don't think it depends. Every urn's different. Some urns can cook and nothing happens to it, and some urns cook quicker. The new urns cook quicker. They're more insulated. So that's hard for me to know. You should figure yourself out during the week. Yeah, what's the shot? Yeah. That's exactly what we asked. The Mishnah says there was never a chashash that you might go out and take out food. There was never a chashash in the Mishnah B'chlal. The Chay was mashma that wouldn't be the chashash, and therefore we're back to saying that it's good to be machma on it, but if you don't get all worked up and get all excited about it. Okay, I say again, man, the psicha is a murder, you do achana for Shavuos. What's the achana for Shavuos? Every yontif you need achana. What's the achana for Shavuos? Leave it that Torah. Nothing more. That's all we need. So coming together here, listening, the ones online, on live, and this is all the credit to Rabbi Gaddis for putting this together. It's not so simple to go ahead and take the Sachrayas to come and put this initiative.
If you don't mind, I'm going to be cuts on that.
And,
ask the road.
Yeah.
The way, and we'll have to talk about this afterwards, because it's 3-day yontif, then you're going to get these shilas over and over and over again. Maybe we should video a short answer to the 3 or 4 most important shilas which you may get in 3-day yontif, including the most inflation at night, but also Bishul issues, keeping things on for 3 days, what should they get to this? That will be at a separate time. Make it easy for you, and then we can be making things in the way. And then we'll save for you a lot of time.
Okay. So Rabbi Gaddis, if I just ask you that if you could just send me exact questions and build another about it. Okay, fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Rabbi Sai, the Balmach Sasher should be on momentarily. The answer, the Rav said, thank you, extremely very informative. It's good. Whatever you're telling me. Okay.